Okay. Can anyone tell me what is a dashboard? Thank you, Archana ma'am. I was on mute. Can anyone tell me what is a dashboard or where do you use a dashboard? What is dashboard? More than one chart. So you have 2 or 3 charts and you have certain sliders or buttons which help to control everything. That is a dashboard. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to create 3 different pivot tables. Step 1, create 3 different pivot tables. Then based on those 3 different pivot tables, we are going to create 3 pivot charts. Get all the pivot charts on one sheet and then add timeline filter and add a slicer to it. For that purpose, we are going to use this sample superstore data. Anywhere in the cell, do a control A to select the whole data. Anywhere in the cell, do a control A to select the whole data. Now you can use data which is in the form of a range of cells and create a pivot table out of it. And if you have like tabular data or data in table format, you can use that also to create a pivot table. You can use that as well to create a pivot table. So right now, this is a range of cells or this is data which is in a range. We can use this and create our first pivot table from this. So I'll do a control A, go to insert, and under insert, we have pivot table where I can create a pivot table from. Okay. Click on pivot table. And now they are going to ask you, select a table or a range. Select a table or a range. So this is already a range of cells, okay, which I have selected. Choose where you want your pivot table to be placed. Choose where you want your pivot table to be placed. So I will choose a new worksheet. Click on OK. And here you will see I have a new worksheet over here called sheet 4 where my pivot table has been placed. I have a new worksheet here where my pivot table has been placed. Now, the headings which were there in my pivot table are a part of my fields here. Correct? So suppose I take category. And under category, I can take subcategory. So I have category, I have subcategory, and I'll take the sales values. So I have the sum of the sales values for the categories as well as the subcategories. Now what I'm going to do, this is my pivot table 1. So let me call this pivot 1 and click outside. The sheet name is pivot 1 and under pivot table analyze, you will see the name of the pivot table as pivot table 1. This naming and this labeling is very important because when we establish a connection between this pivot table and the slicers and the timeline filters, we exactly need to know which slicer is connected to which particular pivot table. I repeat, we exactly need to know which slicer is connected to which pivot table. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes in order to create this. Please try everyone. Please try this, everyone. Let me know if you have any doubts or queries. For those who've just joined in, we are referring to the data set called Sample Superstore. And we have selected the data and created a pivot table on a new sheet. We are doing the preparations in order to create dashboards with this particular data. Once you finish creating it, please write a quick done in the chat box. Once you finish creating it, please write a done in the chat box. Okay, now what we are going to do is, now we are going to create a pivot chart. Now we are going to create a pivot chart. Okay, now what I'm going to do over here is, I'm now going to click over here and create a pivot chart. I'm going to click over here and create a pivot chart. So click on this, choose a chart of your choice. Choose a chart of your choice. So once you choose the chart of your choice, I'm choosing a simple clustered column chart. Click on OK and place your chart here and increase the chart in size. Now, if you see in dashboards, you don't have a lot of these labels like sum of sales or the filter option. So right mouse click on this, and these are called field buttons on the chart. We will simply hide the field buttons from the chart. Hiding it will not show them on the chart screen. So what are we hiding? We are hiding, I'll do a control Z, field buttons. Hide all field buttons on chart. So basically, we are hiding the field buttons on the chart. Select the total, delete. And now you have your chart. And now you have your chart. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to copy this chart, insert a new sheet. This new sheet is called sheet 5. I will rename it to dashboard. And I will come here and paste my chart here. I will remove the total as well because I don't want the title. I can see there are categories here. So this is good. So this is my pivot chart, okay, which is based on which table? Pivot table 1. So what did we do? We first selected sample superstore. We took the data of sample superstore and represented it in the form of a pivot table. We took the pivot table sheet, we renamed it pivot table 1. We also went and checked the name of the pivot table. What was the name of the pivot table? Pivot table 1. Then, based on the pivot table, we created a pivot chart and we hid the field buttons from the chart, remove the title and remove the legend. So in short, we have cleaned up the chart only to show the columns and the labels along the X and the Y axis. Now, based on this pivot chart, we are now going to create a slicer. We are going to create a slicer or a timeline filter. So select the chart, go to pivot chart, analyze, and say insert timeline. And on the order date, I will say okay. And this is my slicer for the order date. Now, when I choose this window, I will only be seeing the data from July to October 2018 in this pivot chart. In order to clear it, I can click here or press the keyboard shortcut Alt-C. Alt-C will clear the slicer or the timeline filter which has been applied to your pivot chart. Is it clear, everyone? This is the first step. So we are starting with the preparation for dashboard. If you feel that your chart looks better a little to the bottom and you would like your slicers on the top, you can do that. And I can increase the length of this and I can reduce the height. So I can go to timeline and reduce the height of the timeline. And I can also go and remove the scroll bar so that it takes less space. If you feel you do not want your header, you can hide the header as well. Okay. In this way, you can work with your pivot chart and your timeline slicer. Right now, you are seeing all periods because all the data is being shown to you. But as soon as you show a particular window, it is only that period's data which is being shown in the pivot chart. Let us go and let us create one more. Let us go and create one more pivot table and a chart. So go to the data. Has everyone completed this much? Has everyone completed this much? Can I get a heads up in the chat? Is it clear, everyone? Any questions, any queries? Can you give me a heads up in the chat box whether you all have completed this much? Then I can start with the second chart. First the pivot table, then the chart. Priyanka, Adil sir, Manohar sir, Ritu, are you all managing? Have you all completed this much? Do you all want me to wait or should I proceed? Okay, great. Thank you for the heads up. I'm going to select the data, go to insert, pivot table. Select the table of the range. Sample superstore is the range which has been selected. Choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. New worksheet. Click on OK. Now here, I'm going to create one where I am going to take the region, and along with the region, I want the profit region wise. Then I will go to pivot chart and I will take a line chart. I will take this line chart with markers. Click on OK. Here I have my line chart with markers. What do I need to do? First step, remove the heading. I don't want the heading. Remove the legend. We do not need the legend. And right click and remove the field buttons and make the chart clean. Now what I want to do over here is, I would like to go in chart design and I would like to add a trend line of a moving average, or I would like to add a linear forecast. So click on linear forecast and you can see your linear forecast. I'm going to select the linear forecast and I will format this line. So click on format, choose red color, and in weight, we are going to make it a little thicker. And instead of dots, I will go and ask for dashes. So can you see I have a linear trend line and I also have my normal. Now, if I want the legend now, because I feel there could be a confusion, I can go to design and go to legend and ask for the legend at the top. Copy this chart from here. And the new sheet which was called dashboard, I repeat, the new sheet which was called dashboard, paste it here. Now, when I come to my order date and I change the filter, can you see what is happening? Are both the charts getting affected or only one chart? Can anyone tell me when I make changes to the order date slicer or the order date timeline filter, are both the charts getting affected or only one chart? Which is the chart which is getting affected? Pivot chart 1, the first one which I created with category data and subcategory. But the second chart which has my forecasting as well is not getting affected. So what I need to do is I need to select this timeline slicer and I need to go to report connections and connect this to the other chart which it is not affecting. I repeat, I need to go into report connections and I need to connect it to the other chart that it is not affecting. So click on report connections. Can you see pivot table 1? Pivot table 1. Pivot table 2 is on sheet 6, which is not affected. So click to check this. So you're connecting it now. And now see what happened? Now both the charts are getting affected. Can you see the difference? Why? Because from the timeline slicer, from report connections, I connected this timeline slicer to the second pivot table as well. Click on OK. And we have completed. Is it clear, everyone? Any questions? Now what I'm going to do is, Now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to create another slicer, but for this pivot chart. So select this chart. Under pivot chart, analyze, click on insert slicer. And now I'm going to add a slicer on the segment. Click on OK. And you see the list of segments. But I would like this in a horizontal format. So what will I do? Increase this in size and add more columns. Increase the height of the columns. So now when I click on consumer, you'll see this chart is affected. Now how many charts are getting affected with the segment slicer? Is one chart getting affected or two? When I click on the segment slicer, is one chart getting affected or two? Only this trend line chart is getting affected, correct? If I want to connect it to this particular chart as well, what will I do? Can anyone suggest? I will again have to go and connect it. Connect it through report connections. So select it, go to slicer, click on report connections. Can you see it is only checked pivot table 2? That means this particular segment slicer is only affecting pivot table 2. This particular segment slicer is only affecting pivot table 2. Click on pivot table 1, click on OK. Please try this, everyone. Please try this, everyone. Any questions, any queries? Let me know. Any questions, any queries? So this is the basis for a dashboard where you have multiple charts or graphs And when you make changes to a single slicer, all the charts and the graphs get affected. Along with this, we can also add certain matrices. Like if we need total sales, if we need figures like total profit, or if we need a number of sales, matrices like that can also be added by using the pivot table option only. Okay. So for that, let me show you how to do. We'll have to select a sample superstore again and create three different pivot tables for that. So go to pivot table, new sheet. So here for total sales, I will only take sales and put it in the value sheet. This becomes total sales. What does this become? Total sales. So I'll make this total sales. I will just take a copy of this and I will paste it down. If instead of total sales, I want the number of sales. So for the same pivot chart, I will come here and I will go to value field settings. And from sum, I will make this a count. So this will tell me number of sales. I can take both of these values on that sheet along with icon sets. So I'll go to the dashboard sheet. I'll go to insert and under icon, I will add a graph. Under icon, I will add a graph. So let me take this graph, insert, move the graph here. And next to this graph, I will add a text box so that I can put my value there. This is my text box. So all I have to do is select my text box, go over here, write is equal to, go to the sheet 7 and select these two cells. Why am I selecting two cells? Because if I select only this cell, I get the get pivot. I don't want the get pivot link. So I'll select 2 and then I will remove B44. Enter and you can see the number. Align it centrally, make it bold, and here you have the total sales. Now when you make changes over here, your total sales is not getting affected. But if you want your total sales to get affected, you will come back to this particular pivot table and you'll have to link this pivot table. What is the name of this pivot table? Pivot table 3. You'll have to link it to these two slicers which are present here. So first things first, what I need you to do is step 1. Let us take it one at a time. Select the data and create one total sales and one count of sales pivot table. So you can select one pivot table, copy it and take a copy on the same pivot table sheet. So on the same sheet, you can have two pivot tables. Once you are finished, two pivot tables on the same sheet, let me know. Two pivot on same sheet, correct? With total sales and count of sales. Create this much, then we will go ahead. Have you all completed this much, everyone? Two pivot tables, same sheet, one with total sales, one with count of sales. Have you all completed this much, everyone? Has anyone completed this much? Two pivot tables, same sheet, total sales and count of sales. Then the second step will be to go to the dashboard sheet, click on insert, and under icons, choose an icon with charts. For count, I will choose something else. For count, maybe I'll go for this one. This is head count symbol. I'm using this. And this is for my total. Go to insert icon and insert the icons, please. Anyone has any doubts or queries, let me know. Or if anyone wants any part to be repeated also, you can let me know, please. Okay. Once you've inserted the icons, we will insert the text box. Once you've inserted the icons, we will insert the text box because we will place the number inside the text box. Then we will select the text box. This is the most important step. Select the text box, go to the formulae bar. Select the text box, go to the formulae bar. Write is equal to, select the text box, go to the formulae bar, write is equal to, and go to the sheet where you have done total sales and number of sales. And instead of selecting one cell, because we don't want the get pivot data link, select two cells. When you select two adjacent cells, it does not give you the get pivot data link. Then B4 has no value. So you backspace and delete B4 and hit enter. It will give you the value in the cell. Enter, it will give you the value in the cell. Centrally align it, center and middle. Centrally align it, center and middle. And after that, you can change the formatting. After that, you can change the formatting. You can select the text. You can select the text. Increase the font size from here. Okay, you can select the text. Just increase the font size from here if you need to. Okay. Now, the most important step now is when I make changes here, my values of total head count don't change. I'll just take the total head count here. I have taken the sum here. So I'm going to go to sheet 7 and take the total. Enter. So I will now come here and make it bold. Okay. Now, if I want these things to get affected, if I want these things to get affected, what I need to do is on sheet 7, the two pivot tables which are there, on sheet 7, the two pivot tables which are there, I need to link them to the slicers. See the name of this pivot table? Pivot table 3. Make a note of it. See the name of the next pivot table? Pivot table 4. Make a note of it. Now on the dashboard sheet, click on the segment slicer. Now on the dashboard sheet, click on the segment slicer. Under slicer, go to report connection. And see over here, it is only connected to table 1 and 2. Connected to table 3, connected to table 4. Click on it. Can you see the numbers changed? Similarly, click on the order date slicer. Go to timeline option. Again, go to report connection and connect it to 3, connect it to 4. Click on it. Is that clear? Can you see now what is happening? Now when I'm making changes, not only chart 1, chart 2 are getting affected, but next to the icon where I have my total and where I have my count of sales, even that is getting affected. Now, in order to give the finishing touches, what you can do is, I'm just minimizing it so that you can see how it's looking at a glance. You will go to view for the finishing touches, remove the grid lines. And if needed, you can also go and you can make like a box around this whole thing. So this is a simple dashboard which we have created using the pivot table, using our knowledge of charts and graphs, and using report connections and icons. Please try this everyone, and then I will ask you all to show me what you all have created, please. Please try this everyone, and I'm going to check individual work. For those who have completed a part of it, can share screenshots like we were doing yesterday. So those who finished parts of it can take screenshots or use clipping tool, snipping tool, and send me small images of your work. If anyone wants to share their screen or if anyone has any questions, let me know. Please try everyone and let me know when you all complete. Please try everyone. Let me know when you all complete. Then we can go ahead with an introduction session for macros. Please try everyone. Let me know when you all complete. Okay. Let us now begin with macros. Okay. Now, can anyone tell me why do we use a macro or what is a macro? What are the words which come to your mind when you think of a macro? Anyone? Can you think of automation, repeating tasks, using shortcuts to perform tasks? Correct? So whenever you think of a macro, these are the words which come to your mind. That means you're automating a task. It's a task which you're doing all the time, so you don't want to repeat it. So you will record it in the form of a macro and only run it. Correct? That is what macro stands for. That is what we associate macro. Okay, so let us begin with the simplest and the most basic type of macro, which is a formatting macro. Now, what happens in case of a formatting macro? In case of a macro on formatting, what happens is when we run the macro, that selected area of cells will get formatted. That selected area of cell will get formatted. So for example, if I come over here and from sample superstore, if I'm going to take this data, I'm just copy pasting some data on this sheet and I'm pasting it. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say wherever my cursor is, it should color the cell. So macro 1, what should the macro do? Color the cell in yellow. Correct? What should it do? Color the cell in yellow. So if the cell is here, it will color this in yellow. If the cell is here, it will color this in yellow. Correct? So let me keep the cursor here. Okay. And after keeping the cursor here, okay, I will go to developer tab. And over here, I'm going to go to macro. But by default, when a macro is recorded, it is always an absolute reference macro. What is absolute reference? Absolute reference means it will run on the same cells on different sheets. Correct? It will run on the same cells, but on different sheets. Correct? So suppose if I keep my cursor here, okay, and I select this much. Okay, I keep my cursor here, I select this much, and I color. It will apply from B2 to D2 on all the sheets where I run them. So that is how by default macro runs. So keep the cursor here, click on record macro. Macro name ABS MACRO. ABS MACRO means it's an absolute reference macro, which is by default. So the name of the macro is ABS macro. You can assign a shortcut key to your macro. I repeat, you can assign a shortcut key to your macro, correct? So you can come control, you can press shift and you can say E. Why will I not say control A only? Why did I use shift key? Because if I say control A stands for the normal keyboard shortcuts. It will clash with them. In order to avoid that, what I am going to do is I'm adding shift. So it doesn't clash with the regular keyboard shortcuts. As of now, I'm storing the macro in this way. And here I'm going to write a brief description of the macro. Here I'm going to write the brief description of the macro. If I want to, if I'm sharing it with a team, click on OK. Now, can you see over here stop recording? And you will see stop recording here. So you will see stop recording in both places. You can stop recording from either place. Now what I'm going to do is select this much. Go to the home tab. All this is being recorded, each step. Click on this yellow fill. Go to the drop down. Click on all borders. And either you go to the developer and stop recording, or you go down and click and say stop recording. Now the macro has stopped recording. Okay. What is the shortcut? Control plus shift plus A. Correct? Now let me take a new sheet and let me come and say Control Shift A. What happened? My cursor was here in G. But where did the coloring come? From B2 to D2. This shows that when you record the first macro, it is always an absolute reference macro. I repeat, when you record a macro, it is always an absolute reference macro. If you want it to run in the active cell or the cell in which you are, you have to use the relative reference option. Please try this, everyone, and let me know if you have any questions or queries. Please try this, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions or queries. Then we can go into more details of macros. In case anyone cannot see developer tab for macro, let me know. If you cannot see, you will find it under File, under Options. Under File, under Options, you will find the developer tab. Okay? Under Files, under Options, you will find it under Developer tab. So can you see Customize ribbon? You can enable Developer tab from here. I'm keeping this open. Excel Options, Developer tab. Has everyone completed macros? Let me know. Give me a heads up in the chat box when you all complete. We'll wait for 2 more minutes for everyone to complete recording and running their macro. Now, another way of running your macro is, suppose I'm on this sheet. I can also go to this macro option and I will see the macro here and I will click on run. I will see the list of the macros here and click on run. So these are different ways of running it. You can use the keyboard shortcut or you can run from the macro list. Now I'm going to go to insert and I'm going to insert a shape. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to insert a shape. Firstly, let me clear this formatting. Okay. Now, to this symbol, I'm going to assign the macro. So every time I click on this smiley, it will run the formatting for me. Right click and say assign macro. Right click on the symbol and say assign macro. What will this do? This will assign a macro to this particular symbol. So every time I click on this symbol, it will run the macro. Which macro? This particular macro. Click on OK. Now come, see the hand icon. Hand icon means it's a clickable link. Click on it and it has run. Now, since this macro is on a fixed range of cells only, every time I click, it will keep formatting the same range. See? It will run the formats on the same range. But if I have like a macro which moves on an active cell and I assign it to a symbol, every time I click on the symbol, it will run the macro on that cell. Try inserting an image and assigning a macro to it on a new sheet. Take a new sheet, draw a symbol, assign a macro to it. Once you all are done with this, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to record a relative reference macro. A relative reference macro will run on the active cell. So if this is the active cell, it will format this. If this is the active cell, it will format this. So all you have to do is select a cell, click on use relative reference macro, and then go and click on record. So now if you see, the relative reference macro tab is switched on. So now the macro will be running in the active cell, and the active cell address could be anything. It is not fixed on a particular cell address. It is a very fluid thing whereby the cell which is active or the cell in which the mouse cursor is, it will only run there. Let me call this format color. Shift B. So first one was Control Shift A. The second one has keyboard shortcut Control Shift B. Stored in this workbook, you can write a brief description. Click on OK. This is your active cell. Go to the Home tab. Put a color. Put all borders. And stop recording. So go to the Developer tab. Click on Stop. Now, if I click on this cell and I say Control Shift B, it will highlight this cell. Can you see this? Because this is the active cell. Click on this cell, keyboard shortcut, Control Shift B, it will highlight this cell. Click on this cell, Control Shift B, it will highlight this. Now we can do the same thing to this particular sheet where we have the data. So this is the macro which we are now working. So what I will do over here is next to this macro, I will insert a symbol. So click on Insert, click on Shapes, and over here, I'm going to insert a triangle. Click and drag and draw the triangle. If you need to write in the shape, you can right click and you can edit text. And you can call this macro 2. You can write in the shape as well if you want. Now click on this triangle and what will we do? Assign second macro to it. So click here, assign macro. Which macro? Format color. Click on OK. Now keep your cursor, see the hand icon has come. Keep your cursor here, click over here, it's highlighted. Keep the cursor here, click on the shape. Keep the cursor here, click on the shape. So in this way, I have introduced to you a relative reference macro where it will apply the macro or the formatting or any other effect in the active cell, and absolute reference macro, which will only run absolute cell reference macro, which will only run over a designated or a fixed range of cells. Over a designated or a fixed range of cells. So please try creating relative reference macro, everyone. Please try, everyone. I have written in chat box what you need to do. Please try it, everyone. Once you're complete, give me a heads up in the chat box so that I can continue. I'm going to take this data, copy it on a new sheet for the advanced filter. We are going to record a macro which will run an advanced filter. I have taken a copy of the VLOOKUP simple data on a new sheet. I have taken a copy of the VLOOKUP simple data on a new sheet. And now I'm going to keep two headers here, department and salary. This is an advanced filter which I'm creating. Based on the department and the salary, I wanted to filter the data. Based on the department and the salary, I wanted to filter the data. So for salary, I will say greater than 25,000 for now. And the department, I will make it dynamic. So I will create a drop down for the department. I'll go to data. Under data, there is data validation, which will allow you to create a drop down. So data tools, data validation. And from here, I'm going to choose a list. From here, I'm going to choose a list. In source of the list, I'm going to take the different department names. So click over here, select this, Control Shift and down. Click again and save. Now, after Office 2019 onwards and Office 365 versions, you will see that this will only take the unique values in the list. So when the drop down is created over here, you'll see only one for each item. You'll see unique values. You won't see duplicate values. So basically, my first scenario is that if it is logistics and the salary is more than 25,000, filter and show me the filtered data. If the department is logistics and the salary is greater than 25,000, then filter and show me the filtered version of the data. Under data, you have advanced filter, and this is the advanced filter we have over here, which we are going to use for this purpose. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to select the data. After that, I'll click on advanced filter. Now, advanced filter will ask me, filter the list in place or copy to another location. Filter list in place means it will filter this data in this particular place only and give me the filtered version on this specific sheet called sheet 10. Criteria range is the condition. Criteria range is the condition. That is to filter the data, but based on what? Criteria range is your condition. That is filter the data, but based on what? Click here and select the data. Click here and select the data. And now click on OK. Now what is happening is you are only seeing a part of the data which fulfills the criteria department logistics and salary more than 25,000, which fulfills the criteria department logistics and more than 25,000. In order to clear the filter, what will you do? Click on clear. Now the advantage of creating the drop down is, if I go to the drop down, I repeat, if I go to the drop down, I click on the drop down and I say compliance and I run the filter again, I will see the data for department compliance and salary more than 25,000. If I change this to less than 50,000, I will now see the data for department compliance, but salary less than 50,000. Is it clear? Okay, so we will see the data for department compliance and salary less than 50,000. Now, every time I want to apply this advanced filter, I will keep going, selecting the data, selecting the criteria and running the advanced. But if I have a macro which is automating this procedure, all I have to do is run my macro every time I change the department or I change the salary value, correct? So every time I make a modification or a change to the salary value, every time I make a modification or a change to the salary value, I will see changes in my macro based on the macro which I am running over the cells. So in order to automate this entire thing, I'm now going to record a macro. Now, when you have a criteria with one condition, you may tell me that I can use a simple filter as well, correct? But if I have two criterias, that means I have compliance and here I have logistics. And here I have greater than 25,000. Now, if you see over here, the salary values in both cases are contradicting each other. Compliance and logistics, I could get even with a normal filter here, correct? I can come here and I can remove this and I will say compliance. I'll click on logistics. Yes, I can get compliance and logistics. But how about two contradicting criteria in the terms of the salary? Greater than 25,000, but less than 50,000. There is a high possibility that if I take less than 50,000, I will lose some of the data of greater than 25,000 and vice versa. So in order to avoid that, we use the advanced filter. So let me show you one more time how to do the advanced filter and then we will run a macro. Now, when we are running a macro for advanced filter, if while recording the macro, we have only one condition, okay, then while running it each and every time, it will only take into consideration one condition. It will give you an error for the second condition. But if you select for two conditions, then it will keep running the macro for two conditions because it is determined by the area which is selected at the onset of recording of the macro. So now let us run a simple advanced filter for two conditions and then we will automate it using macro function. Control A to select the data, click on advanced and here they'll ask me for criteria range and earlier my criteria was this and now my criteria has added another condition which is logistics as well with more than 25,000 and compliance with salary less than 50,000. Click on OK and here you have the data based on both the conditions. Clear it? If you don't want compliance and instead of compliance, you want quality control, we can run a macro for that as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to automate this by recording my macro. I'm going to automate this by recording my macro. Go to the developer tab. I will remove relative reference because I'm going to run it here. Then I'll click on record macro and I will say FI filter ADV. Control Shift and F for the shortcut key. So which is the shortcut key I'm assigning? Control Shift and F. Click on OK. Now my macro is being recorded. So Control Shift and this side, Control Shift and down. Selected the data. Go to the data tab, click on advanced. List range is selected. For the criteria, this is my criteria. Click on OK and click on stop. Do not make the mistake of clicking on clear, because if you click on clear, it will apply the macro, where it will apply the filter in the macro, and it will clear the filter in the same macro. So stop record. So the macro recording has been stopped. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and I'm going to clear the filter. So go to data, click on clear the filter. Then keep the cursor anywhere because it's an absolute reference macro. Control Shift and F and it will run the macro. What will you do? Keep the cursor here, Control Shift F, it will run. Based on the condition that we had given. What was the condition? Quality control and logistics. Click here, change quality control to quality assurance. Keep the cursor here, Control Shift F. So now it is showing the data for quality assurance and logistics. So in this way, an advanced filter can also be recorded in the form of a macro. And every time you run the macro, you clear it in order to clear, and you can change the criteria here and run the macro once. If you would like to assign the advanced filter macro to a button, you can do that as well. So you can add a button and you can assign the macro to a button as well. Please try this, everyone. First, try advanced filter. If you are comfortable with that, then go ahead with recording your action as a macro. Please try, everyone. Any questions, any queries, let me know. Any questions, any queries, let me know. Has everyone completed this? Okay, if you all have completed this, what I need you all to do is there's a beverage data, which we did pivot table on, correct? Which is in table format. Now, in the last few minutes of today's session, I'm going to give you all an assignment. Create a dashboard with two charts, two slicers based on the beverage data. So what do you need to do? You need to create a dashboard, okay, out of this data with two slicers and based on this data, and connect your slicers to your charts. This is your assignment. So I'm copy pasting the assignment even in chat. So you can start working on the assignment, everyone. Please start working on the assignment, everyone. Beverage data assignment. You can start working on the assignment, everyone. If anyone wants any topic to be repeated, or if anyone wants anything to be repeated, let me know. If anyone wants anything to be repeated, you can let me know. The others can start working on the assignment. If anyone wants help with the assignment or wants to share their screen while they're doing the assignment, that can also be done. Please start working on the assignment, everyone. Are you all managing the assignment, everyone? Would anyone like to share their screen? The participants who are there in the session, would any of you like to share their screen? Chetan sir, Ganesh sir, Manohar sir, Pratmesh sir, anyone would like to share their screen? Show what they have worked on? Yes? Anyone, any questions or queries? Have you all started the assignment? Let me know in chat. Have you all started assignment? Just write started if you all have started the assignment in chat, please. Okay, good work, Pratmesh sir. Thank you for sharing. Very good work. Okay. What about the other participants? Are you all working on it? It is better you all try it out once today at least, because if you all get any doubts or any queries, obviously I'm available on email where you all can solve your doubts or queries. But if you try it out once, at least you'll be more confident to try it out the second and the third time. What about the other participants? Are you all working on it? Please share screenshots, or if you want to share screen, let me know that as well. Any questions, any queries, anyone wanting to share screen? What about the other participants? Have you all begun working on the assignment? Ganesh sir, Chetan sir, Jay, Manohar sir, Mojesh sir. Any questions, any queries, or if anyone would like to share their screen? If anyone has missed any of the sessions, the recordings are available. In case you all have seen the recordings and you all have any doubts, you all can ask me now. Any questions, any queries, team? Ratmesh sir, is it going okay? What about Archana? Is she still in the meeting? Archana, Priyanka, or have they left? No, I think they've left the meeting. I'll wait for 2 to 3 minutes more if you'll have any doubts or any queries. Otherwise, we will call it a day and we'll stop the session for today.